Thank you for tuning in to watch the Speak AAC to Teach AAC workshop presented by Lauren Whitlock and Melinda Simon, speech language pathologists for Hanover County Public Schools. This workshop discusses the importance of inspiring communication by speaking the language your child will speak. This session was a hands-on, interactive session filled with video examples as well as plenty of opportunities for the participants to practice speaking AAC. If you were unable to attend the workshop in person and would like to practice some hands-on communication, please use the contact information in the accompanying slides presentation to contact Lauren or Melinda for more information.
So we can practice modeling itself. It's one of those things that it seems very intimidating at first, so we want to make sure we have enough time. We do have some slides that we want to go through, so we may go through them a little quickly. Please, if we're going too fast, let us know, ask questions. Don't hesitate to raise your hand and interrupt. We are more than flexible, so we really want you to take away as much as you can for today.
And one of the things that we want to project today is sort of the need for modeling, especially when it comes to AAC. And as you can see, by 18 months, babies have heard 4,380 hours of spoken language. And that's a lot. I mean, for 18 months, we're talking to our children, constantly telling them all sorts of things, getting them to learn about the world. But we don't expect them to speak in full sentences yet. That's not our expectation for an 18-month-old. But we need to also note that if AAC learners only see symbols modeled for communication twice weekly, that's maybe how much speech that they would receive, it would take 84 years for them to have that same exposure with aided language stimulation as an 18-month-old has with spoken language. So it's interesting to see what our expectation is for our AAC users. We can't expect them, we're gonna hand them an iPad and all of a sudden they're gonna be fluent. They need to be taught, and that's what we're here today to talk about, is we speak AAC to teach AAC. So we've divided this up into sort of 3 areas we're gonna cover today. It's our communication partner rule of 3. We speak AAC to teach AAC. We always attribute meaning to the child's communication. And then also we inspire communication. We don't require it, which is definitely a big difference that we are going to cover today. So our first part is speaking AAC to teach AAC. And one of the best ways to talk about AAC is for you to use the device as well. And so that is our invitation to you, is for you to go ahead and try out the AAC device that your child has at home. Even though it is your child's device or your child's core board or your child's switch that they're using, we want to make it accessible not just for them, but for you as well. So you have to speak the language of AAC too. So in the AAC community, you're going to hear all sorts of different terms as far as modeling, aided language stimulation, aided language input. But in all honesty, this is the same concept that we're using. As far as using the device as you're going along and saying the words to your child. So you're modeling as you're going along. And that's how people learn. If you think about a child that is just learning language, you're not, again, going to expect them to be totally fluent. You're going to say one word and you might point to it as you're going along. Or you might say, oh, go, and like send a car over to them as they're playing. Or, oh, it's turning, it's spinning, and you're gonna get excited about it. Same thing needs to happen with AAC. You're looking at where the child is, and they need to be immersed in that language. So just us doing it in school or in speech therapy is not enough. We have to do it sort of across the board, every day, all the time, to really get a child fluent using their device. You will use your words and thoughts to speak with the AAC user and their system. So when we look at how to model, we saw in our video that it took time to get there and a lot of modeling. And if you notice, the family, the friends, they were all creating a phrase and she might have said one word in response. That is okay. And that is perfectly acceptable, especially starting out. The message should be one word above the student's spontaneous communication, okay? So if they're able to do one hit at this point to communicate, you might put together maybe 2 word phrases or maybe 3 words, but no more than that. It's just because, and I'm guilty of that too, as an SLP, I want them to talk in sentences immediately. But we have to realize that we have to meet them where they are at as far as their language growth. And while selecting the icon, we also need to say those words too. If they have a sound generating device, that will also say them, but we need to verbally express it too, just again, to get that understanding. But also with this, please have that expectation that they're understanding what's going on. So even if they're not responding at all back, they're still getting and learning the language as you're going along.
Even if they're not looking at what you're modeling, that does not mean that they're not listening and hearing and picking up that information that you're sharing with them.
Very much so. One also thing that we need to note is go slow, okay? These are language learners. They are picking up on things every day, but going slow is definitely a plus. Now I know we have some little ones that like to go fast and like to sometimes hit a lot of things. Sometimes we gotta slow them down a little bit to get that message across, especially when we're modeling. And giving that time to pause between models gives an opportunity for that child to join in. I always like to think in my mind, like, okay, I might need to count to 10, and that's a long time sometimes, just to count 10 seconds before you move on to something else. But that's a really imperative because it gives them a chance to process, okay, what was said, where should I now look to find the word that I want, and then make that movement to express themselves. So that's something, it's really important to use that pause and allow them the time to really generate their response. Another area that we definitely want our kids to do is to model core words. As you all know and probably have seen on children's devices, or maybe this has come home, these are our core boards, and this is usually the front of our Pro Loco screen if your child's using this system. And so the green especially, are core words that we use all the time, that are like the stop, go, see. These are our loaded words that we get a lot of meaning out of and can be used across contexts. So using these have a lot more impact than, say, using marshmallow, okay? So marshmallow only goes so far. Go, I can use to roll the ball, it's going across. Oh, we're gonna go to the store. Oh, we're going down the hall. So that, again, we're bang for the buck when we use those core words. Also, repeating that same model across context, okay? I just gave 3 examples of go, so we need to carry that over to understand that that word is not just isolated. Marshmallow might be. It might be at dinner time, we're gonna talk marshmallows. But go and a lot of our other core words can be used in a variety of different situations, which is why they are loaded with different meanings. And then finally, the last one on there is acknowledge and respond to any communication response. And that's really important too. Even if they are hitting one button over and over and over again, you need to have that expectation that there is meaning with hitting that repeatedly and give that reciprocal back and forth to acknowledge that as communication. Okay. So, just in summary, as far as why modeling is important, we're learning a new language. It requires really listening, seeing that language all the time, and being spoken to before we can really speak and use the language. And we all learn skills really at different paces. We have some kids that pick up language super fast, but then we have others that need years to develop the skills. So each child, we meet them where they are, and meet them where they are as far as using AAC too. By modeling our thoughts and ideas in the same language as that AAC user, we're going to promote that system as being valid and valued method of communication. And that's what we really have to get them to sort of buy into it. And the best way to do that is get mom, dad, parents, friends, all to buy into it too. And so, and just to reiterate that one too, even if your AAC user doesn't seem to be paying attention, continue to model, because they definitely are, even if we don't notice it. So this goes along with always attribute meaning. The student explores and the partner attributes meaning. And so let me sort of explain a little bit more about what that means. Okay, so there's really two main ways we can give meaning to the communication our students are using. We can try to label their actions and behaviors, and by therefore using that, we're validating that communication. We're not just saying that's a random hit on there, we're really giving them a back and forth. I always think of this as like you're having a conversation with the AAC user. And that's ultimately our goal, is that we want that conversation. That back and forth is ultimately our goal for our children, to give that communication function not just as a request, but with every single thing, with comments, with greetings, with all the things that come in to being really a person. So I'm gonna play a quick video just to sort of give an example. Now, we can also respond purposefully and respectfully to all their communication tips. And as you saw in that video, is that even though the child was not using AAC, still we can understand what a child means when they're reaching for us. And we're just taking that extra moment to give meaning behind that using the AAC device to make that connection. Oh, that reach means you want something. That's probably one of the easiest ways to do it. We know that our kids, especially like food, favorite toys, anything like that, we know what they want ahead of time. And as parents and again friends, or they might instinctively, you know what they want. But taking that extra second just to use their AAC, oh, you want, you're attributing meaning to what that reach means. And so we can also take a look at this one as a good model too. And notice in that video too, she's taking that one-hit response and expanding it. She's being respectful of what the child's saying. And because we're not mind readers, which sort of goes along with our next slide, because we're not mind readers, even if we think that's a totally incorrect activated button, we can still attribute that meaning to what they say. And I liked also with that last example too, is that they gave a couple of different meanings about what that could be meaning by saying cake. There was a lot of different ways that it could go, because again, we don't know for sure what the child's meaning until they tell us. So I do want to sort of give one more video, and this is Rachel Maddle. She's another SLP, and great with AAC about what to do when a child makes a mistake on their device. So why attributing meaning is important? It sends that message of respect and value for their communication. And again, we want that back and forth. And by actually responding to it, that's going to definitely show them that your words are important to me, and that's what we want. It helps students learn what words or phrases mean in specific contexts. And that sometimes gets very interesting. We have on our core boards here, go away. If a kid says that, I have definitely done that, got it up and gone away, and they're just like, oh, wait, but they did learn the meaning of it. So honor what they say. Even if it doesn't mean that necessarily you agree with everything they say, that's not what I'm saying, but at least honor what some of those requests are. And also the last one on here, it encourages students to use their AAC systems. When we honor and validate their communication, then it's just going to encourage them to use that AAC device even more. And that's, again, we want them to be communicating all the time, every day, everywhere.
Absolutely. Says about AAC is that it's a visual language. So similar to sign language where you're seeing the words that are being communicated, AAC really is a language. And I think if we stop thinking about it as a system or a device and as a language, I think we will feel just in general more comfortable with learning another language. So the last and my personal opinion, probably the most important thing is to inspire, don't require. And this phrase was coined by Rachel Maddle, who we just saw. And this really has two levels of meeting. Again, we want to make sure that we are giving our students the reason to communicate, to make them feel like, oh yes, this is so cool, I need to do this all the time. And the other thing is it builds connection and teaches body autonomy, which is also very important. All right. So one of the things that comes with using our AAC and inspiring communication is that as we're using this visual language system, we want to give our kids the ability to say what they want to say, when they want to say it, to whomever they want to say it to. And unfortunately, they may not always want to say it to us. They may want to say it to somebody else, and we need to be very respectful of that. So to inspire that communication, we need to look for the things that they want to talk about rather than the things that we want them to talk about. I don't know how many times I have said, how was your day at school today? And I get it was a normal day. It's my youngest, that's all what she always says. It was a normal day, or I didn't do anything. They don't want to talk about school. They want to tell me about, the drama at recess, or, what they did at Parks and Rec after school. So when we kind of force our agenda in the communication piece, we may be, in essence, kind of pushing them away from wanting to communicate with us. So we have to look for the really silly, the strange things, the new and amazing, like crazy cute cat video that they're gonna be like, yes, I want to talk about this cat all day long. So when we have that motivation to communicate, it really encourages them to embrace that language for themselves. When we are making it more about work or testing, do you know where this button is? Or, can you do this? It's, it's weather time. Tell me what the weather is. Well, that's valid. And I have some students who that's the best part of their day is to be able to tell what the weather is. But for other kids, they're like, I could care less whether it's, raining or snowing because I'm stuck in this building all day and that's not what I want to talk about. Having that own intrinsic motivation to communicate is what's going to drive them to use their language. If we're just forcing them to say what we want them to say, this tool becomes work, which then becomes something non-preferred, which is not what we want our kids to have. So again, everything we do in life is very hands-on. We hear all about, hands-on learning and getting and interacting, which is great. We just need to make sure we're not putting our hands on. And we've all, I think, been in a situation where we have either helped a kid, learning to write their pencil, we're holding their hand and we're moving it and showing the shapes. Using communication, we're like, oh, I'm gonna show you, we're gonna say like. Well, what I'm doing is I'm communicating. They're not communicating like. I don't know if they want to say that they like that. Maybe they don't like what we're talking about. But we can't do that. And it seems very counterproductive to say, well, but if they don't know how to touch the buttons or which button to push, they're not going to be able to communicate. They will, because we're modeling. We're using our fingers to say our language, to tell them our thoughts, our feelings. When we put our hands on, what we are also saying is, I am in charge of this situation. Your body is now an extension of my body, and I am making you do what I want you to do. And because this is such a vulnerable population of non-speakers, that sends this message of, it doesn't matter what I think or feel or how safe I'm feeling. If an adult wants me to do something, I just have to let them do that to me. And that just leads down very scary paths. So we want to make sure that we are respecting their bodies, no matter how old they are, and giving them that ability to be able to communicate spontaneously. So again, we can't force anybody to communicate. I can't walk up to you, Virginia, and say, all right, I need you, I'm gonna move your mouth, I'm gonna move your tongue, and I want you to say thirsty. I can't do that. I would go to jail. So we can't really think that's okay to do with a non-speaking person. I can't move their articulators and make them say what I want them to say. So like I said, using that hand over hand, we take away their control. And you know, there are exceptions to every rule. I have a lot of students who feel very comfortable in taking my hand and using their hand to move my hand, whether it's a sensory experience or a comfort level. As long as they are in control of my hand, that's okay. They are now using me as their extension. That's fine. We just have to be very, very careful. Sometimes you'll see hand under hand, but in communication, we sometimes in our excitement to help them communicate still manipulate the hand. So my policy is hands off. If for some reason you need to give a little help, ask for permission. That's the respectful thing to do. Can I help you? You know, show you where this, word is. Let them give you consent. Most of our kids have a very distinct yes or no. A lot of times that no is very distinctive to let you know that no, that's not okay. All right, so the big why inspire don't require is so important. Is mostly because when we're inspiring kids, they see AAC as their voice. Using it helps them. Whereas if we require them to communicate, it becomes work or something that other people make them do. When we're inspiring, people believe that they have the potential to learn. They accept what they can do and work with them to build skills. Unfortunately, people have a perception that if you are non-speaking, you're not capable, and that's absolutely untrue. So we want to make sure that we're inspiring that. When we're inspiring kids to communicate, they're using the strategy that works in the moment. Now, communication can be on a device with your voice. It can be shaking your head no. It can be scooting around, turning your body away. That's all communication. And we as communication partners, we respect that. We don't demand that they communicate in a very specific way. I'm not going to say, well, Melinda, you said no by shaking your head, but now I need you to say it in German. Come on. We wouldn't do that to an AAC user either. And it happens. Go use your voice. Well, but I just told you no, so now you're not hearing me communicate to you what I've already said. When we express ourselves and being understood using the AAC, however they're using it, we're respecting that language, that communication. We're not, they've had that intrinsic motivation to communicate, whereas, sometimes, if you say this, you'll get a cookie, or we're kind of training or programming that behavior. That's not real communication, not real language. And again, when things are very motivating and meaningful, they're going to want to communicate to you. Everybody wants to be able to share what's going on in their life, how they're feeling, something fun. But if I'm constantly placing demands on a certain situation, then I'm going to abandon my best tool for communication. All right, so we did great on time. Does anybody have any questions about any of that before we get hands-on? Okay. So we are going to play a game. Becky, Christine, would you mind helping us pass out iPads? I think we have enough iPads for table groups, and if you want to join a group, turn around, meet a friend. This is definitely an interactive activity because we're going to practice choosing a topic and modeling that ways that you can communicate in that situation. We're going to pass out kind of our little model master sheet. As you turn on your iPads, you're going to notice the board is color-coded. And so I have, you'll notice the headers. Oops, sorry, some of them are. Yeah, no, it's good. The headings for the different things will correspond with the type of speech that is located on the.
There you go. I would not have guessed that.
And then just under the colored headings, just write some of the words that you might use during that time. And then the challenge is think about questions that you could ask. Talk about the process. That's going to be really important in that shower time. Any ways that they can advocate for that, don't like, things like that. We're going to kind of come around and help and ask questions as you go.